Jaya Vishnupada, Paramahamsa Acharya, Astotartha, Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Homes, Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Maya Gordon Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Guna Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Samaleda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Amala Purana Paramahamsa Samhita Grantaraj Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai, Yugadharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagni Ki Jai, Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Devi Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to these seven devotees, all glories to these seven devotees, all glories to these seven devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Which verse number is it?
34.
34.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Rayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayat Nastapareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, translations and commentary by His Divine Grace ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, Canto 2, Chapter 5, The Cause of All Causes, verse number 34. Varsha Puga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Sabhava Sto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat Varsha Puga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhava Sto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat Varsha Puga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhava Sto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat Varsha Puga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhava Sto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat. Bhagavad Gita. Get me some papers. Varsha Puga, many years. Saharsha Ante, of thousands of years. Tat, that Andam, the universal globe. Udake, in the causal water. Sayam, being drowned. Kala, eternal time. Karma, action. Svabhava, sta, according to the modes of nature. Jiva, the Lord of living beings. Ajivam, non-animated. Ajivayat, caused to be animated. Translation. Thus, all the universes remained thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entered in each of them, causing them to be fully animated. Please repeat. Thus, all the universes remained thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entered in each of them, caused them to be fully animated. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Lord is described here as the Jiva because He is the leader of all other Jivas, living entities. In the Vedas, He is described as the Nitya and the leader of all other Nityas. The Lord's relation with the living entities is like that of the Father with the sons. The sons and the Father are qualitatively equal, but the Father is never the Son, nor is the Son ever the Father who begets. So, as described above, the Lord as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, or Hiranyagarbha Supersoul, enters into each and every universe and causes it to be animated by begetting the living entities within the womb of the material nature, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, verse number 3. After each annihilation of the material creation, all the living entities are merged within the body of the Lord, and after creation, they are again impregnated within the material energy. In material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of the living entities, and the Lord is the Father. When, however, the animation takes place, the living entities revive their own natural activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus the varieties of living beings are manifested. The Lord, therefore, is ultimately the cause of all animation in the material world. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshunvitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupagadam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shruta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vidham Nam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakabhinamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surito Pangor Mama Madamater Gati Matsarva Svapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Dibyad Brindaranya Kopajumada Śrīmad Ratnagara Singha Sanasto Śrīmad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastalabi Sevyamano Smarami Śrīmad Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Bhattastasti Taha Karshan Menu Svanar Gopir Gopinatha Shri Estuna Tapta Kanchan Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Panamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Varshapuga Sahasrante Tad Andam Mudake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat. Thus, all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entered in each of them, caused them to be fully animated. Hare Krishna. So, yesterday's verse gave a detailed description of the Supreme Vishnu, Mahavishnu, lying down within the water of the Mahatattva. And that water is the causal ocean, Karanajal. And when Mahavishnu sleeps within that causal ocean, innumerable universes are generated along with his breathing. Today's verse describes the next Vishnu's activities, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. In each and every universal universe, the same Mahavishnu enters again as Garbhodakshay Vishnu and lies there on the serpent-like Sesha incarnation. And from the Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Lord Brahma originates or is born, and that Lord Brahma creates all forms of living beings of different shapes in terms of different desires within the universe. So yesterday Prabhupada directed us to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10. The chief engineer of the material creation is the Lord himself, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10. It is he only who directs the material nature to produce all sorts of moving and non-moving creations. Mayadakshena prakrite suyate sa characharam etunanena konteya jagad viparivartate. This material nature, which was one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So Krishna conscious devotees understand that Krishna, Vishnu, his energy, the spiritual energy, is actually the real substance or substantiality that's actually going on, making this material nature work. The Supreme Lord is the supreme will and background of this material manifestation, but the management is being conducted by material nature. Prabhupada would give an example, sometimes a crude example, but illustrative, that a very big man or the big wealthy industrialist, he just has to make a phone call to his sub-manager, who will, just by speaking one or two sentences, do it. So much comes into being and so many workers are moving and doing. But the big man who gave the original order, he didn't have to do anything. He's so powerful. Or he would just make a phone call and say, yes, yes, yes. And it takes less than 20 seconds, and the rest of the day he's playing golf or something. The Lord by his, Okay, so the industrialist, the big man, makes a phone call, the Lord, and Prabhupada uses the word mere. What is dictionary meaning of mere? Just slight, insignificant, very small. Mere glance injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature, and they come out in their different forms and species according to their last desires and activities. And in this verse 9:10, Prabhupada gives this very good analogy, which is given in Smriti. When there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person, yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. There is a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with the material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains. In summary, material nature, without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot do anything. Very amazing occurrence. Prabhupada was preparing to make the cornerstone laying ceremony for the Bombay Juhu Beach property for the temple of Sri Sri Radha Rasa Bihari. And any day now, very soon, is coming the book that Srila Prabhupada instructed and encouraged in a mood of great victorious exaltation when, in his own words, Prabhupada said, that was a good fight. The temple was actually completely secure. The property was securely in Prabhupada's hands. He told to Giriraj Swami, his one of, if not the main devotees he entrusted with securing that project, after saying this was a good fight, a book should be written about it. So, like any great order, it might take some years to fructify, just like Srila Prabhupada would say, my spiritual master ordered me as early as 1922, but it took me so many years, more than 40 years, to finally carry out the instruction. In other words, time, place, and circumstance, but the order is always burning deeply, and because an order given by the pure devotee spiritual master, by the Lord himself, is so great, so deep, so multi-beneficial for all different classes of people and living entities on so many different levels, that even a simple instruction, which is right to the point and easy to understand what is the intent, the actual how it will happen according to time, place, and circumstance is to be revealed over a long period of time. Just like Lord Chaitanya, he said, in every town and village of the world my name would be chanted, but it took some almost 500 years for it to actually happen. 480 to 90, from 1966 to 1976 is 480 to 490 years of Lord Chaitanya's advent. And Prabhupada said of his own ultimately taking sannyas, that his spiritual master appeared to him 3 times in dreams over several decades. And in the last, and Prabhupada said, actually, it was in Vrindavan that his spiritual master appeared to him. Now you take sannyas. Formally, the time was not right, but now you can do. Circumstances are proper. we see here how it's described that the living entities lie dormant during the sleeping period of the Lord. And when the Lord wakes again, he causes or animates the living entities to again take up their dormant desires for material sense gratification. And they take the various bodily forms in this material world to try to fulfill those desires. Desires lying dormant for millions and millions of years, eons. So how great is the process of devotional service to meditate upon fulfilling the order of the spiritual master. In this life, and it's as Narottam Das Thakur says, he who gave me the eyes to see, who gave me this gift of devotional service, he is my Lord and Master, birth after birth. The Lord as Garbhodakshay Vishnu, or Hiranyagarbha, super soul, enters into each and every universe and causes it to be animated by begetting the living entities within the womb of material nature, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14.3, the chapter of the modes of material nature. Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham didami aham sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Purport. This is an explanation of the world. Everything that takes place is due to the combination of Kshetra and Kshetragna, the body and the spirit soul. This combination of material nature and the living entity is made possible by the Supreme God Himself. The Mahat Tattva is the total cause of the total cosmic manifestation, and that total substance of the material cause, in which there are the three modes of nature, is sometimes called Brahman. The Supreme Personality impregnates that total substance, and thus innumerable universes become possible. This total material substance, the Mahatattva, is described as Brahman in the Vedic literature, Mundaka Upanishad, Tasmad Etad Brahman Nama Rupam Anam Chajayate. The Supreme Person impregnates that Brahman with the seeds of the living entities. The 24 elements, beginning from earth, water, fire, and air, are all material energy, and they constitute what is called Mahad Brahma, or the great Brahman, the material nature, as explained in the 7th chapter. Beyond this, there is another superior nature, the living entity. Into material nature, the superior nature is mixed by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thereafter all living entities are born of this material nature. The scorpion lays its eggs in piles of rice, and sometimes it is said that the scorpion is born out of rice. But the rice is not the cause of the scorpion. Actually, the eggs were laid by the mother. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of the birth of the living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they only seem to come out as products of material nature. Thus, every living entity, according to his past activities, has a different body created by this material nature, so that the entity can enjoy or suffer according to his past deeds. The Lord is the cause of all manifestations of the living entities in this material world. Sarva yonishi konteya mortaya sambhavantiya tasman tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. So this is a very important point, the difference between the spiritual energy and the material energy, the difference between the Supreme Lord and his agent, the maidservant, the illusory energy, the material world. In material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of the living entities, and the Lord is the Father. Oh, yes, why did we say that about Bombay? So, there was a young man from Amsterdam, Holland, in Europe, who was introduced to Srila Prabhupada, interested in spiritual topics, spiritual life, as an architect, and Prabhupada immediately engaged him in drawing a design for the Bombay Juhu Beach Perspective Temple, and he gave him photographs of the Gopinath temple in Vrindavan as a model. He's saying, I heard in Sarabhi Prabhu's memoir, and he immediately engaged him and said, "You come tomorrow and you will be initiated." And all the devotees were just amazed. Somebody just walks right in, and not only that, he's receiving initiation, but to be given for such a great project. Anyway, the point was that Giriraj Swami was given this order, and he meditated on it for 40 years or more, and now it's almost in our hands, this book. I was looking at the video that they made with Kalachandji speaking. That's Tamal Krishna Maharaj's younger brother, formerly known as Carl. When he finally became interested in Krishna consciousness, he wanted to be initiated by his brother, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Said no. Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, "That'll change the rasa. You're my younger brother. I'm not going to be your guru." And so by and by, he became the disciple of Giriraj Swami. And as Kalachandji, he's an amazing editor and writer, and he's helped many devotees publish very important books. So he's been very intrinsic in helping Giriraj Swami manifest this book. So material desires, it's very, very serious to overcome them by reawakening our original spiritual desires to satisfy the senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead based on our eternal relationship. Because material desires, they don't end with this body or this life, but they carry over, they carry us to the next life. Actually, the desires that we're cultivating now are creating the next body or the next situation that we will take and or live in. So this is why Krishna consciousness is so absolutely important, incumbent. Prabhupada said it is not voluntary, it is compulsory for everyone. Because without Krishna consciousness, one will be forced by one's unpurified material desires to take one successive life, birth and death in this material world again and again and again. So Krishna consciousness is the greatest welfare activity, the greatest saving activity, the greatest charitable activity, and We like to read. Can I see the fourth canto, part 1? There's the appearance of Lord Vishnu in the, corrected as best they could, sacrificial arena of Prajapati Daksha. They got into, Prajapati Daksha caused there to be a very violent reaction based on his offending foolishly Lord Shiva. So when everything was set right, the Lord appeared and all the different personalities, they offered their prayers to Lord Vishnu. So this very nice verse of the verse number 28 of the 7th chapter, the members of the assembly addressed the Lord, O exclusive shelter for all who are situated in troubled life, in this formidable fort of conditional existence, the time element, like a snake, is always looking for an opportunity to strike. This world is full of ditches of so-called distress and happiness. There are many ferocious animals, always ready to attack. The fire of lamentation is always blazing, and the mirage of false happiness is always alluring. Two devotees, husband and wife, were coming to see Srila Prabhupada in his Los Angeles quarters, and the husband came first, and Prabhupada said, so where is your wife? And the reply was, oh, she's always very busy, Srila Prabhupada. And he was just a few steps behind. And then as she was coming into Prabhupada's presence, yes, always be very busy in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, Maya will say, come and play with me. The mirage of false happiness is always alluring. But one has no shelter from them. Thus, foolish persons live in the cycle of birth and death, always overburdened in discharging their so-called duties. Prabhupada says in one place, no one has anything else to do save and accept devotional service. And Prabhupada would say, no time, sir. The businessmen, you know, they're very busy reading heaps and heaps of useless newspapers and spending all day talking about unnecessary, foolish politics and politicians. But when asked to come to hear Bhagavad Gita about the eternality of the self and how they can be ultimately happy and achieve eternal welfare, they simply say, no time, sir, no time. Always overburdened in discharging their so-called duties, and we do not know when they will accept the shelter of your lotus feet. So this is the actual Vaishnavas, illustrated by Prahlad Maharaj. I have no problems, but I'm simply concerned with all the poor fools and rascals who are absorbed in all their elaborate plans to make their society friendship and love. I'm simply concerned in love for them. Purport: persons who are not in Krishna consciousness are living a very precarious life. What is that? Bhajahure mana Shri Nanda Nandana Bhaja Ranara Vindure. So what is that? This life is tottering just like a drop of water on a lotus leaf. At any moment, our life can be finished. Very precarious life, as described in this verse, but all these circumstantial conditions are due to forgetfulness of Krishna. What is that? Always remember Krishna and never forget him. Just this maxim is the basic principle of all other principles, do's and do nots, yamas and niyamas, and all other contemplations. The Krishna consciousness movement is meant to give relief to all these bewildered and distressed persons by reminding them of Krishna. So when devotees appear in public, the main reason why they appear in public is to chant the holy names of their Lord Krishna. And devotees doing that under Prabhupada's direction, they became known as the Hare Krishnas. Why? Because they were always chanting Hare Krishna. One very wonderful disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Pragosh, who in his day was one of the champion and most well-known book distributors in the movement. He told, I think you were there, you saw him at the Rockefeller Center. Like, when was that? Like 2 or 3 years ago. Anyway, he said, as soon as we put on the Western clothes, even, okay, we're going to go undercover. Huh?
He came to Harinam and said that.
Right, right. Everything just started to unravel. Hare Krishnas go underground, Hare Krishnas in the closet, closet Krishnas, I have experience in Harinam. There was a devotee distributing book wearing pant and shirt, Western clothes, and a person said, who are you? I don't want it from you. I don't know who you are. I want to take it from him. He's the monk, What is it? In the Sadhu Goswami Astakam, they're very expert at delivering the living entities. Papotapa Nakrintano Tanubritam Govinda Ganamritai, by pouring upon them transcendental songs about Govinda. O Govinda, I shall not fight. So we are distributing the transcendental songs of Govinda, the song of Govinda, the Bhagavad Gita, to remind them. One devotee Prabhupada being challenged, by like a very surly and what is it, snobby, nose in the air British reporter. Why have you come here, sir? We have our own country. We have our own culture. We have our own religion. We have our own God. What can you bring to us? We have everything already. He said, your country came to my country and took everything that they possibly could by force for over 250 years. But I have come to give you freely what you forgot to take. And I was like, boy, did that shut that fellow right up, Therefore, it is the greatest relief work for all human society, and the workers thereof are the greatest well-wishers, for they what? Follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, who is the greatest friend of all living entities. The devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they know the inner purpose of the Lord. Therefore, they take all types of risks in approaching ignorant men to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. Varsha Puga Sahasrante Tarandam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhava Sto Jivo Jivam Jivaya. Thus, all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entering in each of them caused them to be fully animated. Full on, fired up, and back home, back to Godhead in one lifetime. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any questions or comments?
I was just wondering,
Louder.
because sometimes we read in Prabhupada's books how he says the devotee should desire to go back home, back to Godhead.
Yeah.
And in other places he says the devotee doesn't even want to go back to Godhead. He just wants to serve Krishna. So how can I understand those different statements? And both of those statements are given a lot in Srila Prabhupada's books.
Well, it comes to my mind we should, how pure devotional service surpasses liberation, nectar devotion. We're not salvationists. Hansadutta Prabhu was with Prabhupada at the 1971 Kumbh Mela, and Prabhupada came with his World Sankirtan Party, his hand-chosen, the best devotees, Western devotees, to be his dancing white elephants. Giriraj Swami was one. You see in the footage that Giriraj Swami, I used to have one of these back when I was in the 60s. It was like this hat that, you winter hat that your face just comes out of, but it's like, it makes you look like a medieval feudal serf, And Prabhupada is like shaving his face, with some warm water that was arranged for him, like, in the Pandal camp tent. So, Prabhupada, Hansadutta is asking Prabhupada, is it true that if you bathe in the Triveni at these exact times, you will achieve liberation? Yes. He said, but we haven't come here for liberation. We've come here we're already liberated. We're coming here to preach Krishna consciousness. Like that. So, but at the same time, to not have the desire to go back home, back to Godhead, but simply to continue in the preaching mission of the spiritual master and of Lord Chaitanya, that is a very, very high platform which we shouldn't just banty about or utter cheaply if we're not completely, qualified, realized, or warranted. Ultimately, it comes down to this, which is a very simple principle, which is what we're taught right from the moment we walk in the door of the Krishna consciousness movement, is that our activities, our life, our consciousness, what we do moment to moment is based on a very simple contemplation. Is this pleasing to Krishna? What does Krishna want? Does Krishna want this? Then this is what I want. Krishna doesn't want this, and I don't want that. Krishna wants us to come back home, back to Godhead. Then we want to go back home, back to Godhead to please Him. We see in what Srila Prabhupada said, anyone who wants to know what is devotional service, devotees, must read this book, Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Rita, that the ultimate ascension back home, back to Godhead, into the loving arms of Gopal, Krishna in Vrindavan. My dearest Rupa, I've been waiting and waiting for you to come home. And actually, why is Krishna so pleased that we approach the fallen conditioned souls? who are lying in dormant forgetfulness, and they're going to go back into the body of Mahavishnu and just stay there for millions of years, wasting so much time. Don't jump like a monkey, you know. Conditional life, material desires is just like, you know, completely useless activity. Because they have a long lost relationship with Krishna, and Krishna is missing them. And Prabhupada, in speaking on the disappearance day of his spiritual master in Los Angeles, December 1969, it's very emotional. He's saying that how important is this preaching mission, and it's like a good man sees, you know, a very well-known and famous son of a very well-known and famous man just loitering in the street like an urchin, all dirty and just, you know, completely crazy. He said, "My dear boy, I know you. You're the son of a very rich man. Let me take you to your father." So the son is taken to the father, the son is reunited with the father is reunited with the son, and all his problems in his life are solved. This is a crude example, but so ultimately, and Prabhupada taught, and he emphasized for us, we should want to go back home, back to Godhead. And you read the teachings of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and in his very last days, that'll be along with Gita Jayanti, the next festival we'll celebrate his disappearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It is incumbent upon anyone in the human form of life to try to understand their relationship with Krishna. Go back home, back to Godhead. And actually, Prabhupada coined that term, which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur very much liked. The motto of the Gaudiya Math is that everyone goes back home, back to Godhead. So this is actually a very deep, loving, personal contemplation. Just like the interesting history of the Los Angeles temple was Prabhupada acquired the property in like late 1969, and there were some problems within ISKCON that caused Prabhupada very great disturbance in the summer of 1970, and then he left to, on the order of, he said, Lord Dwarkadish was ordering me to go back to India. You know this story? Yeah? And I don't want to go. That's the India, my spiritual master gave India to my godbrothers. They're already preaching there. I have this big Vatsika. I want to develop that. I said, no, you have to go. And it was like, this thing was a loving tug of war, it was like an argument. And then Prabhupada said, Krishna said, well, if you go to India, I'll give you a temple even better than this Vatsika. As Brahmananda is telling the story, if you look at the footage in Following Srila Prabhupada, DVD volume number 2, I believe. And he said, well, Prabhupada couldn't argue with that. I'm going to get a better temple. Okay. And that ultimately became the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan. What to speak of Bombay, and then the long-term project, Mayapur Chandradoya Mandir. So, but that's on a very high platform of arguing with Krishna, because that argument is not, I want my, like we want, no, Krishna, I don't want to surrender because I still want to enjoy material life. That's like an argument over how to please him more, which is simply glorious. And it was ultimately it was Prabhupada's destiny, just like Lord Chaitanya. He inundated the whole southern part of India by going through South India and spreading the Sankirtan movement. So Srila Prabhupada was to reignite that in a huge way. So a seeming distressful, demoralizing, depressing situation sent Prabhupada back to India. And not only did he he was heralded in great triumph, which just less than 10 years earlier, he was just forgotten and not taken seriously and just, ignored. But he was like, everyone took note. All the leaders of the parliament, the government, and everywhere Prabhupada went, he was a sensation. And then when he finally came back to the United States, 1 year later, all of those problems were long gone, and his movement had expanded by leaps and bounds. We should say something about Nandarani Devi Dasi, who was one of the first disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who was initiated along with her boyfriend, then soon to be husband, Dayananda, in 1967 in San Francisco, and it was they who opened up the first Krishna consciousness in Los Angeles. So she passed away yesterday, or the day before yesterday. Did so much service. So that is another, is that the spiritual master calls his disciples to associate with him and come with him to help him in the next leg of his devotional service. So these are very deep contemplations, but we shouldn't, there could be a type of false pride. I don't want to go back to Godhead, I just want to stay here and distribute books, take another birth and distribute books. Do we really understand how Krishna would be pleased if we go back home, back to Godhead, and engage in our eternal loving relationship with him? Do we actually understand what that means? Prabhupada says in one place, understanding one's eternal relationship with Krishna can greatly enhance one's preaching work or ability. So, those are some thoughts. So we've gone over time. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hari Bol. Grantaraj Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Bol.